Hey everyone, how you doing? Phil here from Mandarin Blueprint. Happy today to talk to you about the character Shin, which means heart or mind. And I'm always excited to talk about Chinese characters because they are the thing that make the language so logical and easy to understand if you take them seriously. It is my firm belief that learning Chinese character by character, which is to say, keeping that as your North Star compass on your way to Chinese fluency, will be the main mentality shift that will bring a lot of people from failure and frustration to success and enjoyment. So, I'm actually supposed to be on vacation right now, but I think that these live streams are really important. And so, despite being on a bit of a staycation at the moment with my mother in law in town, and we're showing her about Austin, Texas, she and my wife are currently out for brunch. And so I figured, why not knock up a keynote about one of my favorite characters, Shin, and give you guys some extra Mandarin Blueprint attention today. So, as per usual, what I'll do in this stream is go over some content, talk about it a bit, then I will break to talk about what you guys are saying in the chat. So if you have any questions that come up while I'm making this presentation, no, I'm not ignoring you, and that I will get to it when I get to the next slide in between. So there are three main concepts I'm going to cover today about Xin. One is where it kind of means heart or mind. One where it actually means the organ in your body that pumps blood. And one where it's kind of the various different ways that you can use Xin at the end of a word to indicate the mentality or the mindset of whatever comes before it. And that's a very useful way to understand it. Most Chinese words make perfect sense. And by the way, also apologies. This is an air mattress here because I'm giving my mother-in-law the bed in the bedroom, so I'm going ahead and sleeping on this air mattress every night in my office. So what kind of a worker am I? I'm taking a vacation, and here I am sleeping in my own office. That doesn't make any sense, but actually we're having a great time. So, all right, so let's talk about Xin. For a character that means heart, there really is more to it than just that. For example, if we say 心里, which literally means heart inside, this doesn't mean your literal heart. It means, in one's heart, in one's mind. When I say something like, for example, 我的心里跟我说我非常爱她, which would mean when my heart tells me that I love her so, we're talking about the metaphorical heart. So just like we do in English, Chinese also see the heart as being not just an organ that pumps blood, but also something that is more metaphorical about the human experience. So you don't have to think of something different. Now, 心理 can often be confused with 心理. 心理. And that's because they have a similar pronunciation. And of course, the right side component, as I'm sure you can see here in the second word, is the same as the full character in the first word. So people can sometimes get these confused. But what is this one, 心理? 心理. Well, first we have heart, of course. The heart logic. Heart logic. Well, what would heart logic be? Well, it may come not as too much of a surprise to find out that this means psychology, right? The logic of your heart, the logic of your mind. And it's very interesting to consider that, there's always the mind-body dichotomy that people talk about. Like, is it your brain or is it your mind, that's producing consciousness? Is it the organ of your brain or is it the sort of spirit of your mind? And many people take a non-dual approach and say, hey, it's all the same thing. I kind of tend to fall into that camp. But regardless, though, you can see here that this is more the psychology side of it. Whereas if you were going to suggest that somebody were focused specifically on the heart, then, oh gosh, I'm getting marketing messages. I'm putting on Do Not Disturb. But if you were to say, focus on the heart as a like organ and you were a somebody who does surgery on it or specializes in that, that would be something different than this. This is the logic of the mind. So the logic of the mind, the logic of the heart, that is psychology. And you can also say 心理学, which would specifically refer to the study of psychology. 学 is the character used for any kind of study at all. So there we have 心理, which means in one's heart, and it's just a reference to your feelings, basically. How do you feel about things? And then you get 心理, which is psychology. Now, what about this one? 心情, 心情. And this is, of course, a good chance to practice that problem initial X and Q, because both of them have your tongue against the back of your bottom teeth. 心情, 心情. And you also get to compare in versus ing, ing, right? So in Chinese, think of it as being like en, in, xin, xin, right? And then ing is, it's ing, except that a lot of times, especially in the north, and I also did notice it a lot in Sichuan, they kind of have a more of like a young, young, right? So qing, qing, like there's kind of an extra diphthong in there. It's optional. You can just say qing, qing. You just have to make sure that that is pronounced with the ing sound. But if you say qing, qing, xin qing, right? Like that makes it a little bit clearer. And honestly, I think if you're studying Chinese, it makes it easier to make sure that the person you're talking to understands you, because in and ing can sometimes, they can sound pretty close when you're hearing them in terms of a minimal pair. But with the in, you don't have that extra sound, whereas you kind of get that in the ing. And so it's a good way to go, xin, qing, qing, qing. That makes it clearer. So what would the heart situation be? What's your heart situation? Well, that is actually your mood. 心情, 心情. So it's funny when I love these presentations, but I do often feel like what I'm just trying to get across to you guys is that when you know the characters, this is really obvious. Like this stuff is not hard. And that's the thing that Chinese, I think a lot of people get very in their head about how hard, quote unquote, hard Chinese is. But if you learn character by character, then that it kind of gives the lie to the whole situation, because you realize so many of these words are such obvious, like my heart situation is my mood. How much easier is that to learn? Now, if you're learning English and you see the word mood, there's nothing about the word mood, unless you happen to know a lot about linguistic history, that tells you what that means. But since so many Chinese words are like this, where it's like heart logic, well, that's psychology. Heart situation, well, that's mood. It just makes it so much easier. Here's another one. 心愿. Now, yuan, this actually has the heart component inside it here at the bottom. Yuan, yuan. Well, that means, so of course we have heart. So this is your heart desire. So yuan means like desire or want. Yuan yi is a way of saying like, 我愿意跟他打交道. I want to interact with him, or I want to interact with her. So yuan means desire. So this naturally, it means a wish or an aspiration, your heart's desire. Wow, shockingly difficult. How about 心思? I like this word, 心思. So 心, of course, heart, and then 思 is like it means to kind of consider or be thoughtful about something. And I like that because you'll notice here that we have the heart component at the bottom again, and the top component, that's an interesting component because it does mean rice field on its own, but it's also come to mean brain when it's in its component form. So basically, you use your brain and your heart to consider something. And so 心思 is kind of your thoughts or intentions of some kind. And In particular, you might say 我没有心思跟他说我真正的想法. So I don't have the intention to share my, or I don't have the heart to, maybe. I don't have the heart to share my true opinion, right? And so that is an example of where you might see 心思 in context, and it's just kind of thoughts or intentions. So the considerations of your heart. How about 心意? 心意. Now, I remember how I said 愿意 means to desire or want something. Well, this is the 意 in 愿意. It means meaning. So this is your heart meaning. 心意. So what do you think this would mean? Well, it actually means kind regards. And that's what I kind of like about Chinese, is that, you know, and just kind of humanity in general sometimes, is that we tend to think in terms of, yes, what's in one's heart contains multitudes, and it contains both good and the bad, but it maybe skews optimistic. It skews kind. It skews, like, there's just a slight skew towards the more positive. And so just saying heart meaning, theoretically, in and of itself, it doesn't imply good or bad, but then 心意 does end up implying kind regard. So it's pretty neat that the Chinese think of it this way. Okay, now, how about this one? 心慌, your heart panic, 心慌, 心慌. Well, this actually would refer to anxious, being anxious. So if your heart is panicking, then you're anxious. And of course, 心慌, it doesn't necessarily mean like full on panic, but the idea of there being some level of panic within you, you're maybe not showing it that much. I mean, I'm sure it always shows through a little bit when you're anxious, but you are internally having a minor panic. And I'm thinking of if you guys have seen the new Pixar movie Inside Out 2, which is based on the premise of in the first movie, she's an 11-year-old girl, and her basic emotions of joy, sadness, fear, disgust, and anger. And then as she grows a little bit older and enters puberty, she starts to have also anxiety, embarrassment, and ennui, and envy. And so anxiety is her internal panic, right? And it's what plans out the things that she doesn't know are going to happen. So that's 心慌. Okay, so how about this one? 心疼. Well, that's heart pain or painful. 疼. You can, and by the way, that's an adjective you can just use to say like, oh, 我的手臂很疼, right? I actually recently burned my my hand a little bit here from some cooking oil, and it created a bunch of blisters, and it was kind of 疼. I can just say 手臂. That's like, you know, or 胳膊. Either one means arm. 我的手臂很疼. That would just mean my arm is painful. It hurts. My arm hurts. And so if we say 心疼, we're talking heart painful. Well, this actually means to feel sorry for. And so that kind of gives you a sense of like, oh, when you feel sorry for someone, it's like your heart is in pain for them. And I like that. That's pretty cool. And there's other ways you can use some of these words, just to be clear. Like, you know, I'm not saying that some of these words have multiple applications. I'm just giving you kind of the main ones. So to feel sorry for here is 心疼, heart pain. Okay, how about this one? 心声, 心声. So this is your heart sound. 声 is just the general word for sound. 声音 would mean like it's like voice or sound. So you could say heart sound or your heart voice. In is also a word for sound. So you could say that 声音 is voice sound, and that just means sound in general. But heart, voice, heart, sound, what would that be? Your innermost thoughts. I think it's probably, in this case, it's better to translate 声 as voice. So your heart voice is your innermost thoughts. And you'll excuse me. You'll have that come up whenever you're, you know, talking about, like, a lot of things with the Shin are happening in a way that's only observable to the person experiencing it, right? It's not or if it's observable to other people, it's observable in like micro expressions or your behavior or whatever. But it's not like on the face of it, like, I don't know, I'm smiling or something, and then we call it a smile. Okay, how about this one? 心得. De is a great character. It means to obtain, to get. But de, to me, it has this feeling of like a real, I guess, I don't know, maybe this is just in my own head, but somehow it feels more substantial to me than obtain or get. Like it's like you really got it. And certainly with the word 心得, this essentially means your insights, the things that you maybe read a book and you go, 读了这本书以后有3个心得. So I had 3 insights after reading this book, as an example. So 心得 is very useful when you're talking about things that you gleaned from some kind of learning endeavor, perhaps. Okay, how about this one? 心态. Tai. Again, another character that has the heart component in it. And so what might tai mean? Well, this is your heart attitude. Your heart attitude. Well, what would that be? Well, that's your mentality. Your 心态. Are you coming into this presentation with the mentality of like, hey, Baldy, you better teach me something? Or are you coming into it with a 好奇心, which would mean your curious heart? But that's for another slide. But yeah, anyway, so the 心态, that's your mentality. Okay, how about this one? 心底. 心底. All right, 心 is, of course, heart again. Now, 底 refers to the bottom, and in particular, it's like the bottom of something that is contained in a certain sense. Like, you wouldn't say it's the bottom, like, relative to other things in a ranking, really, but you would say it in terms of, like, if you had a bowl, like, the very bottom of the bowl is the D, right? So, 心底 is the bottom of one's heart, right? So it's fairly straightforward translation there, but I'm just trying to get across the idea of like, you imagine your heart as some kind of a container, and deep down at the bottom is the 心底. And so from the bottom of one's heart. And then this one, 心烦. 心烦. So here, once again, you're having your heart, and then what's the second character? Well, fan. Fan means troubled. It's got the fire component on the left, and you're just ill at ease, annoyed, irritated, troubled in some way. So 心烦 is, of course, just to be perturbed in some way. And all of these are examples of where you start with kind of the subject, and then you describe the subject. So the subject in all of these cases is 心, your heart or your mind, and then something about it is it the way that it feels like tongue is or huang, or is it the way that it is placed like at the bottom, or maybe the situation like 情, 心情 and 心底, or is it describing its current state like 心烦 or 心态, right? And so these are all examples of how you could use 心 to first establish the heart or mind, and then kind of describe it in some way. And so I would say that this is kind of the first way you can think about 心. And what I'll do now is I'll check out the chat, see what you guys are saying, see if you guys have come up with any questions, and then we're going to get into some more stuff about 心after that, because it's just one of many ways. All right, so let's see here. When I watched your video about going to China, I noticed your hand and felt 心疼 towards you. Yeah. Are you talking about the scar? There's still a scar there. That was from it was in a baking sheet. I just took it out of the oven and I was pouring the oil in such a way, and I just got me. And what's funny about that is that it didn't really hurt, but it's just still there. It's amazing how burns can like really stick around for a long time. Yes, good notice there, BLT. By the way, you're making me hungry for lunch with a screen name like that. But yes, that is the Blade on the Heart of Shin. And I will talk about that actually in a little bit. So yeah, you're right. Good eye there, BLT. Okay, awesome. And so let's see here. I really want to become fluent. Awesome. Yeah, you can do it. So like right now you really want it, right? So you have motivation. So if you have motivation, the key is to harness that motivation in this, like right now. And here's a way you can harness that motivation. Wanting to become fluent is good. It's a desire, but that desire can create motivation, and the motivation can spur action. The thing is, though, what really spurs action is when you start from the premise that you are already, as an identity, a Chinese learner or a Chinese enthusiast or a Chinese fanatic even. I'm a fanatic about the Chinese language. I love it, okay? If you start from there, then you will build up the processes of a person who's a Chinese fanatic. Just ask yourself the question, what would a Chinese fanatic do today? Well, one thing they might do is watch a live stream about Chinese characters. That's one of the many things they'll do. Maybe they'll eat with chopsticks. Maybe they will make sure that there's Chinese playing around them all the time. Maybe they will make sure they learn one new Chinese character per day minimum, or maybe even 5 new Chinese characters per day minimum. I always recommend starting small, but do something that confirms your Chinese fanatic identity, right? Do something every day that says, if I want evidence in my own mind that I actually am a Chinese learner, then the more votes I cast for that by doing something that is explicitly for the purpose of learning Chinese, 就太了不起了. That's the best way to do it. And so, yeah. And then Bung Entertainment, if you want to share in a second here, why you really want to become fluent. I think that that's always good to know, because if you start your motivation derives from your why, your identity derives from your motivation, your processes derive from your identity, and then your outcomes derive from your processes. So I absolutely agree, Dan. Dan says, learning about the components like this is one of the fun and fascinating things about Chinese. Absolutely. It's so interesting. Like, that's the thing that I didn't really get when I first started learning Chinese. I was like, I want to learn Chinese because it's like really hard and I want to prove to myself I can do it. But then, like, as I was getting into it, I kept going like, oh, dang, this is pretty cool, you know? So, and by the way, if any of you guys want to, get better at learning Chinese, if you want to learn how we do it, if you want to understand, oh, look at Rick. Rick, come here. Come on. No, she's not going to. She's that little lump over there is not just a pillow. That's a cat. Anyway, if you guys want to learn how we teach Chinese, we have a system for learning Chinese that focuses on learning character by character, but tries to get you from a character into a word that uses that character, into a sentence that uses that word, into a paragraph that uses that sentence, into a story that uses that paragraph in the most efficient way possible, so that all the way through you're connected to what you already learned. And the best way to understand how we do that, because theory is great. We're more than happy to share with you the best methods for learning Chinese, but actual practical application is the best. And that's what we do at Mandarin Blueprint. And if you want to understand how, head over to mandarinbp.com/challengeLS. That will let us know you came from the live stream. It's linked in the description. I'll just also drop it in here. The challenge, the Mandarin Blueprint Challenge, will get you to basic literacy in about 30 days or 15 days if you have a lot of time to commit to it right now. So that's a great way to get started. It's only $7, and so it's not cost prohibitively expensive, but it's also a great way to learn, is this what works for you to get the success you want? Bung says, I want to live in China, study medicine in China, and I love the culture and history. And, that's a great set of motivations. In fact, I was originally motivated because I wanted to further my career, I guess. I was like, well, Chinese will be a great thing to put on my CV, right? But as I got to spend time, particularly in Sichuan province, I discovered that actually what I really like about this place is the Sichuanese people and what are they up to? Because they really seem to be quite chill compared to the rest of China, and they have this awesome work-life balance thing, and I was like, there's something about this that I got to understand. So I was really into that. So I went from being professionally focused as my motivation to being a what they call a cultural connector. I wanted to share with the people of Sichuan and people of China some things about Western culture, but also wanted to understand their culture much, much more. So it can change over time. All right, let's continue talking about Shin by moving to the next slide here. And so Shin, we're going to stick to the idea of heart or mind here for a sec. I probably got to get a little smaller here. All right, there we go. And let's get into it. So there, in the previous slide, everything that we covered was had Shin coming first, right? And so you were talking about your 心情, which is your heart situation. That's your mood, or your 心底, the heart bottom, the bottom of your heart. But what about when you put 心 second? Well, a lot of the times when you put 心 second, it is essentially saying the heart or mindset of that thing. So if you have a 好心, a good heart, that means that you are well intentioned. You know, 不要忽略他的好心. Don't ignore his good intentions would be something you might say there. And so it's not saying you have a good heart. It's saying you have the heart of goodness. See what I mean? Like it's like there's goodness as a part of your mentality. Another example here. 心. Now this is like evil heart, and it means actually nausea or sick to your stomach. And it can mean 恶心 in terms of nausea that's like literal, like I ate something bad and it was disgusting, and so I'm sick to my stomach. So like it kind of orbits the idea of nausea, disgusting, sick to my stomach, but it could also be sick to my stomach like not caused by like a bad food that you ate or a virus, but like maybe seeing something grotesque or something like that. And technically speaking, when is pronounced like this with the third tone, it's a meaningful bound form for just the word 恶心, which means nausea. But when it's pronounced it means evil. And so I like to remember that when it comes to remembering words, you have the capacity to make connections that aren't necessarily etymologically correct, but help you remember. So when I think of an evil heart, like an evil internal thing around my heart, it's like a virus is in there and it's making me nauseous, or there's some evil rotten food in there and it's making me nauseous, right? And so I saw something evil being done, right? And that made me 恶心, right? And so even if it isn't technically that way, I think that it's a great way to remember the word. So yet another example there. 恶心. And then here's one I really like. 专心. Zhuan. So 专 means to specialize, right? And a lot of times you'll see 专 in the context of people who are specialists or people or doing something especially for you. Well, when you have to specialize heart, so the heart of one who specializes, or you are specializing your heart, well, that means to concentrate. So this one is more of what you would call a verb what structure, where the 专 means to specialize. And then what are you specializing in? You're specializing in your mind. So you're basically concentrating. You're putting the specialization on your one thing, which is your heart and then your mind. And that means to concentrate. So 专心,你们现在专心于 我的那个表演, right? For lack of a better term. 演示 would be the better word there. Okay, so you guys are concentrating on my presentation, is what I said there. So yeah, okay, and maybe you're not, in which case, that's fine. All right, so 耐心. Well, what do we have here? 耐. Well, this means to withstand. 耐,耐definitely has this feeling of like, hold, right? Yeah, it's kind of, that's got that, and there's a bunch of words that use 耐, including 忍耐, which is another word for like general like tolerance and flexibility. So 耐心, the heart of withstanding, right? Like if you can have a heart that withstands irritation, well, that's patience, right? Or being patient. 耐心. And I actually think that's beautiful, right? That's essentially saying that what patience is withstanding the desire to like shout out or end something or change something for your in a way that ultimately is your inability to withstand an emotional state. And of course, everybody has their breaking point, but I like the way they framed it in Chinese. They basically said the heart of withstanding, the ability to withstand in your mindset, that's the definition of patience. And so I think that's pretty cool, right? How about this one? 虚心, 虚心. Well, this would mean a humble heart. So what is a humble heart? Well, that's modest or modesty, right? And what's interesting about the character 虚, which means humble, is it also means empty. And so isn't that an interesting association? Humble and empty. I think that makes sense, right? Because if you are full, then you don't have room for anybody else's ideas, right? But if you're empty, you're ready to let other ideas come in. And so if you have the empty heart or the humble heart, you're modest. 虚心. An xin. So here we have peace heart. An xin, the heart. And how do we describe it? We describe it as peaceful. Well, this just means to be at ease. An xin, right? Some of these are really obvious. And that's what's so cool about Chinese at times is that when you recognize that there is so much leverage that you get from learning each character individually and giving each character a chance to, like giving it its own special attention. 专心于每一个字, right? So concentrate on every individual character. Then you come across a word like 安心, and I love just writing Chinese characters when I'm doing this. If you just write a word like 安心 down and you go, okay, yeah, I know 安, that's definitely peace, and 心 is a peace heart, and then I find out it means be at ease. It's like, it doesn't take much to remember that. And then, of course, you start seeing words. Once you start seeing these patterns over and over, then you start seeing new words in the context of stuff you're reading, and it just makes sense immediately. I'm constantly in my reading, because I read Chinese every day. Every day that I run across something, I see a word that I've never seen before, but I have seen it before because I know what the characters are, so I know what it means immediately. And that's what's cool about Chinese, much more so than English, is you can sometimes learn a new word from not just the sentence surrounding it, not the paragraph surrounding it, but the word itself. Just the word is often enough. And then, of course, you get the added bonus of having it surrounded by other contexts. So if there was any doubt, the other context helps you pick it up. Now, there's that character, 忍, 忍心. So 忍 means like tolerance or endurance. It's my favorite character. That's why I put it on my wall. Because it's a somewhat deep character because the top component is a blade. So imagine you have a blade that's just sitting on your heart. It's not pressing into your heart, but it's sitting there. Well, that's a little bit unpleasant, eh? If you were to have a blade resting on your heart. But tolerance or endurance is recognizing that this is the state of It's the state we find ourselves in as conscious beings that are familiar with our own mortality, right? We know that this ain't going to last forever, so that's like a blade on our hearts. We know that one day it will pierce through, right? And so if we can tolerate that and endure that, then we will find much greater peace in life. And so if you have the heart of tolerance, well, it means you're able to bear. 忍心, be able to bear. And so I love that word. It's a beautiful word. Okay. 良心. So 良 is good, and it means morally good, right? So we say 好心 earlier, that means well-intentioned, but 良 has a sense of morality to it, like, and that component often gets seen as being like an angel in some way. So the morally good heart is your conscience, right? So assuming we're not talking about some kind of psychopath or sociopath here, we all have a 良心, right? And this is different than your being well-intentioned, because it's, even though it's good heart in both cases, the difference is that 良 carries a sense of morality with it, whereas 好 doesn't necessarily. It could just mean, like, 好吃, like it's good to eat, it's delicious, it's not morally good. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, that is good to eat, right? So 良心, morally good heart, that's your conscience. Okay, 决心, 决, that just means determined. 决, I love that character. It's very, 决定means to determine. It's determined and set. 决定, and it means a decision, right? So 决心 is the determined heart, and it just means determination or to be determined, right? Like, I am determined about this. 我很决心, or 我的决心是, like my determination is, right? And it's really great. And you can say 下决心, which would mean to make a decision or make up one's mind, is a good way to put it. Like, 我下决心了, right? I've come to my conclusion. I've made up my mind, and when I've had a heavy thing to, deal with. So we got that one. How about 信心? 信 means to believe or belief. So the belief heart. 信, 心, 信心. Well, what would that be? The belief heart, the heart of belief. Well, that's confidence. If you are confident, you have belief in your heart, right? So very clear one there. And then you have 自信心, 自信心. Okay, well, that's self-belief heart. Any guesses? Well, that would be self-confidence, right? So if you have 信心, you have confidence in general, and it may or may not be justified or may be confident in somebody else. But if you have 自信心, that's self-confidence as a concept, and then just saying 自信 means confident, self-confident, right? So it doesn't, sometimes when you add 心, it kind of pulls out the kind of philosophical idea more so than it does necessarily directly refer to a mood or anything like that. But it's kind of, but it is pretty, I like that. It's pretty clear. Okay, I'm going to end with these two for this section. I do have another more to say about Shin, if you can believe it. And so, Kai Shin, well, Kai means open, or even it can sometimes mean to start. It's open, like in that, general sense. 改革开放 is the reform and opening up of China in 1979. 开车 means to drive a car, and you're opening up the engine at that point, letting the gas in. It's kai. It means open. I'll totally do a presentation on kai at some point. Great character. But your open heart. Well, this actually just means happy or joyous. And I think that when you are happy or joyous, you're the most open to the people around you, the things that are going on. Like, you ever been in a really good mood? You have a 好心情, and you're very kaishin, you have an open heart, and like somebody comes up to talk to you and you're just like, hey, what's up, what's going on, right? And so that is a good way to say happy or joyous. And there are a lot of words for happy or joyous, but this is one of them, kaishin, right? Now, with that in mind, what do you think guanxin means? Because this is closed heart. Closed heart. Guanxin. Guanxin. Now, this is interesting because you might think it's like, I don't know, is it sadness? Because guan is the opposite of kai. But actually, no. It means to care for. And I like this. This is smart because it's basically saying that in order to care for someone, you only have, like for most people anyway, maybe the less, perhaps if you're totally enlightened Buddha, you could still have an open heart and care for everyone. But most of the people you care for them more than other people because they're a part of a closed group called, your friends or your family or your relationships. In fact, the word guanxi in Chinese is the relationship network that you have. It's kind of the relationship. Guanxi is really important in China, and it's essentially the system xi of relationships in a closed system, right? And you can get into other systems, but your guanxi is your relationship set, and the fact that guan is in there, meaning closed, it makes perfect sense when you think of it from the perspective of like, okay, only so many people are allowed in my heart. Those are the ones who I care for. It's an exclusive closed group, and so is my guanxi. That's my relationship network, and that's also kind of a closed network in a certain sense. So even though guanxin has the, kai and guan are open and closed, you would think that they'd be the opposite meaning. It's actually, happy and joyous and to care for. Very interesting element of Chinese. Nice. Okay, let's take a moment to see what you guys are saying in the chat. What's going on, y'all? Let's get in here. Bam. All right. So, let's see. I'm studying Japanese, but knowing Chinese characters makes Japanese easier to learn. Nice channel. Oh, well, that's cool. Yeah, I Japanese is always one of those languages that like I would love to learn. In a kind of general sense. The thing is, I just don't have any plans to go to Japan, and nor do I. I mean, it just seems like, at this point, I'm married to a Serbian wife, and we're living in the United States, and we spent a lot of time in China, and Japan just hasn't fit into my. And I'm not a fan of anime either. So like, if I was like a fan of anime, I'd be like, oh, I want to watch the original anime, the original Japanese versions and all that. But it is obviously the connection it has to Chinese is fascinating to me. Maybe one day I'll learn it out of interest. But yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and of course the Japanese characters that are similar to the Chinese characters, the kanji, are often a little bit different. And what's crazy is that they often have a Chinese pronunciation, a Japanese 1 pronunciation, and a Japanese 2 pronunciation, just one character. And the Chinese pronunciation is obviously it's not the same, literally the same as the Chinese pronunciation. It's like a Japanese interpretation of that pronunciation. So it sounds like a lot to remember. But then again, if I were going into it, I would know all the kanji from a like visual perspective first. So I would just need to come up with a mnemonic to remember the different pronunciations. Very interesting, though. Hi from Brazil. Hey, Daniel. Hi from Minnesota. Started dabbling in learning Chinese a month ago. Looking forward to eventually watching shows without needing the subtitles. Yeah, like the English subtitles. Yeah, totally. Of course, you can say you can use the Chinese subtitles. The more characters you learn, the Chinese subtitles will start to be really useful to you. And in fact, that's one of the big advantages that Chinese has when it comes to watching media, is that because Mandarin is the national language and it's spoken by everybody, but it is not usually the local dialect, they always have hard-coded subtitles in their TV shows, usually. I mean, like, you never turn on the TV unless it's a live broadcast. If there's anything that's recorded, they've put subtitles in it because they want to be able to connect with the whole country. So if you have a dialect, you still use the same writing system, but you just do a different sound for each character. So maybe you don't know Mandarin as well. Maybe you're an older person and you don't know Mandarin as well. Well, you can see the characters at least. And so if you learn characters as an adult foreigner, then you can understand, you can make connections between the sound and the written language really fast as a result. I mean, fast, it's all relative because there's so much to learn, but like, or I should say so much to acquire. But yeah, anyway. Nice. Well, welcome, Matt. If I go into a restaurant and say, well, but pronounce it, what's interesting is that what you're saying there is they would actually be pronounced the same way if you were talking about meaning evil. But no, nobody's going to think you mean I'm evil because, first of all, you don't just say noun adjective. Unless you're making a comparison, that's kind of a more obscure case, but like, you usually say, 我很饿. But even then, they would probably still not think you're saying I'm very evil. Like, usually it's contextual, but you also have the word 邪恶. 邪恶. That means evil, and there's no doubt about that one. You would never say 邪恶 in relation to hunger. So if you said, 我很邪恶, and they would be like, oh, okay, you're saying you're evil. All right, got him. I guess we should kill him or something. But if you go into a restaurant and say 我饿了, or even 我很饿, they're not going to think you mean I'm evil. That would be that'd be wild. All right, nice. So I'm going to go over one more slide to talk about Shin, but just as a reminder, if you want to know how we teach characters and how you can build up that knowledge of characters and use that as your guiding compass, take the Mandarin Blueprint Challenge, 30 days. It gets you to 124 characters known. You'll be able to read there's a bunch of sentences that you'll be able to read in the back half of level 13, and you'll be able to read them without pinyin or English because you'll know all the characters. So they're tailored sentences to what you learned. So take the Mandarin Blueprint Challenge, mandarinbp.com/challengeLS for live stream. That way we know you came from the live stream, and then I'll keep doing live streams because we'll know that people are coming from that. Cool. And just before I move on, recently started the challenge and I'm remembering some movie scenes more than others. Is this just because that will be fixed through the flashcards or need more attention? Right. So good question. So what Sean is referring to here is that during the Mandarin Blueprint Challenge, we teach a method of remembering characters that involves visualizing people, objects, places, and actions, and then mapping them onto the components of a Chinese character. What are the components of a Chinese character? The pinyin pronunciation, the pinyin initial, the pinyin final, and the tone. The character components. So usually there's 2 or 3. And then just like the radicals, sometimes people call them, but they're really better thought of as components. And then, of course, the meaning of the character. That's what you need to learn. So we apply people to the pinyin initial, so that's an actor. We apply a place, so that's the pinyin final, to the pinyin final, and that's a set. So you have an actor and a set, and by thinking of the actor in the set, you have the pronunciation, and then the room within that set is the tone. So, for example, if I imagine myself in the bathroom of my apartment in Chengdu on Jiannan Dadao, then I already know that the pronunciation is an, and if Jennifer Aniston is there, I know that it's Jian, because Jennifer Aniston represents J-I, the bathroom represents 4th tone, and the apartment itself represents A-N. So I can instantly imagine Jennifer Aniston in there, and so there's the pronunciation. Then you take the character components and make props out of those. You take objects, so people, objects. Well, so for example, this character has 2 components, blade and heart. So if I imagine a blade of some kind of katana, perhaps, and then a heart, like a beating heart that's fleshy and it's maybe 3 times the size, then those can be the props that I have. And then there's the meaning of the character. So depending on what the character is, it obviously has a meaning, and you have a connection to the meaning. So you make the person, object, and place all interact together to create the definition, which is the action of the scene. So POPA, people, objects, places, actions, actors, sets, props, and scripts is essentially how we think of it. You shoot a little movie scene to remember a Chinese character. So Sean's asking, some of the movie scenes I remember more than others. Is this something that will be fixed during flashcards or just need more attention? So The first thing I would say is that during the first part of the challenge, you're getting the hang of the method. So there, some of it is just lost because you're maybe still not fully grasping the method yet. And that takes about 30 to 50 characters. So I would just say one part of it is just take it easy. It'll happen naturally as you keep doing it. But the second thing I'd point out is that what's nice about the flashcards is that you don't have to think about it too much, because once you arrive at the flashcard, if you can't remember the scene, you just ask yourself, what part of the scene don't I remember? Like, Jennifer Aniston was in the bathroom of my apartment on Jiannan Dadao, and I remember there was a blade. What else was there, right? And then you just have to think when you reveal the flashcard, oh, what was missing was this prop. So I need to just think about that scene again, but make that prop more prominent. And what's nice is that means that you're not starting from scratch. You still had a scene in your mind. There was just a piece of it that fell off. Like William and Meady's one of our longtime members. He's a veteran member. He said, it's like you're building a house and a brick falls off and you just grab the brick and put it back on, right? So I wouldn't, in some sense, it needs more attention, but the flashcards will tell you what needs more attention. So you can just trust the flashcards is kind of the answer there, Sean. Thank you for asking that. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the final slide I have here about Shin. And so this time, we're going to talk about Shin a little bit more literally, because Shin isn't just a mindset. It's not just, what's in your heart, so to speak. It's also a dang organ, right? It's an organ in your body. And when we think of it like that, it's called a 心脏, which is literally heart organ, and that is your heart. The thing that's in your body pumping the blood is called 心脏, okay? And 脏 is the word for any kind of organ when it's pronounced in fourth tone. When it's pronounced first tone, 脏, then it means dirty. Like my apartment's very dirty. That's one of those things that I don't know how that developed. I should look that up sometime, but it does seem sort of unrelated. I guess there's sort of a sense of like the things that are in your body should stay in your body. And so if they're out of your body, then it's very zang, but it's still a different pronunciation. It's zang when it's fourth tone. So your 心脏, you can have your 肝脏, that's your liver, and your 肺脏, that's your lungs, right? So you can have different organs. Your 心脏 is for sure your heart as an organ. And your 心率, well, that's your heart rate. Well, it's your heart rate, right? I can look at 心率. Also, the character Liu rules. It's like a really interesting character. And 心率, that's just your heart rate, and there's all sorts of different Liu that you can find around, rates of various things, So yeah, like you'll see that around all the time, and that's your heart rate. So again, literal, we're talking about your real heart here. How about 心 the pinyin is off there. There's always something. There's always one thing I miss. Let me just hang on a second. I'm going to fix this right here on the spot. Nope. Why didn't that work? All right, it always blows my mind when when my keyboard just doesn't work. Oh, I know what it is. It's that it is taking up too much space. I got it. I figured it out. Oh no. Man, it just does not want me to be able to expand this. There we go. So I was typing. It was just all happening off screen. So this is our 心脏病. And there's only one G. Okay, got it. All right. Back to work here. All right. So 心脏, that's your heart organ. That's your actual organ in your heart. Your 心率, that's your heart rate. And a 心脏病 is the heart. Did it just stop? Keynote, what are you doing? Let's see, is it going to fail again? Your heart organ illness. Okay, seems all right. So that's heart disease. So if you have 心脏病, so any kind of 病 is a disease, and so a 心脏病 is heart disease. Now, if you have heart disease, you may be having 心悸, right? So 心悸 is heart throb, or like, and not like, oh, he's a heart throb. It's more like a throb that is a palpitation. So it's a heart palpitation for 心悸. And then 心肌. So 肌 means muscle. So you got your heart muscle. So that's just basically the cardiac muscle. So the part of your heart, when people say your heart is a muscle, that they're referring to the 心肌. I mean, the 心脏, the heart as an organ, is more than just a muscle. It's a muscle and, a series of various vascular networks, right? And perhaps, well, I'll get to that in a second. So we have the 心肌, which is the cardiac muscle. Now, this word I'm going to teach you here doesn't contain the character xin, but you'll see why. So, 梗塞. This means obstruct and clog, 梗塞. Okay? So, this means to clog or obstruct. So, therefore, 心肌梗塞. The heart muscle clog is a heart attack, right? So, if you have a heart attack, then it's a 心肌梗塞. And also, as Chinese often likes to do, a 心肌梗塞. And, there's another error in there. The 梗 is wrong in 心肌梗塞, but I'll fix that. But then, 心梗, this is another way of saying heart attack. So once again, heart, clog or obstruct, heart attack. Now, as you can see there, that's basically an abbreviation. There are a lot of four-character words that get abbreviated to 2 characters. So they basically pick what they consider to be the more important of the 2 from each side. So 心肌, Xin won that one, and 梗塞, Geng won that one. So 心梗is the abbreviation for heart attack. But here's the deal, though. All of those are kind of medical terms. So saying 心肌梗塞, that is a medical way of referring to a heart attack. A doctor would probably say 心梗, right? But how people would usually say it in real life is they would say 心脏病发作. So 发作 is like saying the disease, the 心脏病,发作is like saying it did the thing it's supposed to do. The disease is supposed to make you have a heart attack, so it happened, right? So 心脏病发作 is how most people just say it in real life. And a lot of times, if you know that somebody has heart issues, if you just said 他的心发作了, people would understand you mean heart attack, right? So it's an interesting thing about Chinese is that everything can get broken down into many different types of categories. There's the way that doctors would talk about it, and there's the way that people would talk about it, kind of like in English too. I mean, it's not like doctors doctors will still say heart attack, but they probably would say cardiac arrest, 心跳. So this is heart jump. 心跳, heart jump. Well, what do you think here? This is your heartbeat. So it's not necessarily your heart rate, it's your heartbeat. So that's a nice one to know. 心跳. It's measuring your heartbeat that gets you your 心率. Okay, and I mentioned before the 心脏 is more than just the 心肌, it's more than just the cardiac muscle, because it has things like a 心房, which is the heart house or the atrium, right? So like a heart house, the 心房. And again, sometimes with Chinese, the words that they use, like 房, it means house. It means like building of some kind. Usually it's a house. But it often can then you could translate a different way now by saying it's more like an enclosure that keeps the important thing in it, all right? That type of thing. But if you just think of it as its main word, it's like, oh yeah, the atrium's like the heart house. And again, I look at atrium and I go, I don't know what that means in terms of a heart. Like, I can't just look at the word and understand that unless I like studied Latin. But in Chinese, it's obvious. And similarly, the Shin Shi, the heart room, well, this is your ventricle. So like, again, I'm not saying like you need to know atrium and ventricle unless you're going to like go into cardiac science, but isn't it interesting that should you want to go into something that relates to the heart, it wouldn't be that hard to understand these things. Fang and Shi are very common characters that you use in day-to-day life for other things. And this is part of what I'm saying about how Chinese sometimes is better for specialization than other languages, because you end up just using these concepts that you've already been using all throughout the language, and you're not having to pick up like, you know, some like odd medical terminology, because you're essentially just dealing with the characters you already know very well. And that makes it easier to learn specialized stuff. How about 心脏衰竭? 心脏衰竭. So we know that 心脏 is the heart. 衰 means to decline, and 竭 means to run out, to fully exhaust. So if your heart organ is declining and completely running out, well, I think it's fair to say that that is heart failure, right? So 心脏衰竭. And again, like that, yeah, and it's important to have that as a concept, because naturally you could say that somebody had a heart attack, and you could say he died of a heart attack, but if you wanted to say he died of heart failure, then this is how you would say it. 心脏衰竭. And then finally, let's just do this one to wrap up the sort of cardiovascular world, which is the 心血管. So your heart, your blood, and your pipes, 管. Heart. Oh, once again, I left something out. That was the previous one. So yeah, it's heart, blood, pipes. That means cardiovascular. So I'll go ahead and fix that one. I'm going to fix the two problems I had with this one. I'm just making mistakes all over the place. But yeah, you can see how that one makes perfect sense. We have heart, blood, 血, and then pipe. Oh, let's even say pipes. That's fine. And then here I got to get that gung fixed. There we go. And so, yeah, so you can see here that it's, oh, there we go. Oh, and I gotta skip all these. But anyway, this is a brief, overview of the Shin when it means, when it has that relation to the actual organ in your body. So the first two slides about Shin were about the heart and the mind, mentalities that you have, how it may be that you apply a different adjective to Shin to indicate the heart of that thing. And of course, the first slide was more about starting with the heart as the subject and then saying, well, what about it? Xin, so that's your mind, your heart, your mind. What about it? The qing, the heart situation, that's your mood. How about the xindi? That's your bottom of your heart. And then, of course, here we have all of the various actual heart organ related vocabulary. And I mean, there's more to this than that. And I hope that it's clear that this is an introduction to the character that will make it easier for you to understand when you come across new words that have this character. And so therefore, as you go through the process of learning character by character, as you should, that you make sure to think about what are the different basic ways you can use it. And then when you see it in more complex characters, you'll be able to very quickly acquire them because you understand the different ways in which they work. So with that in mind, I just wanted to remind you guys one last time that the Mandarin Blueprint Challenge is probably the best way you can learn about what Mandarin Blueprint is all about, how we teach Chinese in a way that is methodical. So if you have a lot of motivation, that's great. But if your method doesn't work very well, it's it doesn't make that much of a difference. And so even though you are super motivated, if you're given methods that don't teach characters well or don't integrate, that's a big one. Like, Pimsleur, for example, is fine. It's a good listen and repeat program, but it's not integrated with anything else. So you can do it and maybe you get some success out of it, but you don't then know how to learn characters from Pimsleur. Mandarin Blueprint is a full stack solution to the problem of not knowing how to learn Chinese. We cover how to learn everything and we give you the materials to do so. And so the Blueprint, which is our flagship course, is a massive curriculum that covers 3,050 characters, 11,800 words, and it makes sure that at no point along the journey do you ever get lost. And so the best way to understand how we do that is to take the Mandarin Blueprint Challenge. It's either 30 days or 15 days. And by the end of it, you'll reach basic literacy. You'll be able to read about 124 individual Chinese characters and the associated probably 110 words or so. And we take those 110 words and we teach you how to make sentences with them and learn some basic grammar. So if you want to sign up for that, mandarinbp.com/challenge-ls, and that lets us know you came from the live stream. And so glad to see that Matt here has already signed up. And let me just take a look in the chat here and just see if there are any other questions to answer before I sign off for today. And let's see here. When I started learning Chinese, says Heike, I found it to be a very easy language. The only difficulty is the number of characters and tones. The words are simple and logical, and the grammar is super simple. I completely agree with that. The grammar of, for example, German or Polish is much more difficult. Are there any exceptions in Chinese grammar? I mean, there's almost nothing that has no exceptions, but Chinese grammar is pretty straightforward and logical. Like, there are three main functions of grammar. One function of grammar is to change the order of words and characters. And so most languages have that. It's like, we all went there versus, English grammar is messed up because there's a lot of word form changes. Let me try to think of a better example. I can think of it in Chinese. 我们都不去. We are all not going. 我们不都去. We're not all going, right? So that would mean you change the order of the characters and it changed the meaning, right? So that's one way. Another way is to change or to add or remove characters. So 我吃饭了. Or how about 你吃饭了? You ate. 你吃饭了吗? By adding the ma, you're now asking it as a yes or no question. That's a form of grammar. The other form is to change the word form. So you can go with good, better, best, or something like that. Chinese doesn't have that at all. There's no word form changes. There's no declensions. There's no gender. So therefore, the grammar is fairly consistent. And so, yeah, I would just say that oftentimes there's more than one way to say the same thing. And oftentimes in spoken Chinese, people will break grammar rules, but it doesn't really matter because they're just trying to get across their point. And Matt, welcome to the challenge. Glad to hear that. And then Mr. Gautama says, do you have a schedule for these live videos? I always catch towards the end. So my plan at the moment is this. So first of all, I'm on a little bit of a staycation right now. And so this week and next week, and actually early the week after that, I have like a lot of obligations that are going to be happening. However, once I get back on July 18th, is my intention to do these every day at 1 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. U.S. Central. And so Monday through Friday. So we'll see how that goes for now. I don't know. I'm getting a lot of, I wouldn't say pushback, but some of my other Mandarin Blueprint team seem to think that that's too many times to do it. And ultimately, I don't think I'm going to do 5 days a week forever, but I'd like to do it for like the rest of the summer once I get back on July 18th. But, I have, my mother-in-law's in town right now. And then next week I'm going to visit my parents. And then the week after that, I'm going to Las Vegas for a scaling business workshop to learn about how to make Mandarin Blueprint even better. So yeah, that's what's going on there. All right, folks. Well, that's the end of the questions. So just one last reminder. If you would like to learn more about Mandarin Blueprint, the best way to do that is to take the Mandarin Blueprint Challenge, mandarinbp.com/challenge LS. LS stands for live stream. So please click that link so that we know you came from the live stream and I can know is this something I should be doing? Because, hey, just like Mr. Gautama just asked, if I know that lots of people who come from the challenge come from the live stream are taking the challenge, then I can justify doing it every day. So check it out. Oh, also everyone, please subscribe to the channel. If you're not, our YouTube channel is over 90,000 subscribers now. It'd be great to get to 100K, right? So let's do it. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button. And I'm going to sign off for now. Thank you, everyone, and 再见.